You're listening to Legally Blissed Conversations. This podcast reclaims and rewrites the stories female attorneys have been told about how we should practice law, grow our businesses, treat our clients, treat ourselves, and craft our identities as female attorneys. We'll hear inspiring stories from current and former female attorneys, the ones who question the stories they've been told, the ones who aren't afraid to live boldly and step into their own power. We'll learn from women who define success on their terms. Through lighthearted and curious conversation, we'll unpack the challenges these inspiring female attorneys have already navigated. So join me on this journey. You'll be empowered and ready to rewrite a completely new story about what is possible for you. Well, hey there, and welcome everyone to Legally Blissed Conversations, and a very warm welcome today to Robert Hanna. Robert is a special guest today because even though he's clearly not a lady, he has been an incredible cheerleader for me and the Legally Blissed community mission. He is an amazing example of a male ally, and I'm lucky to have him in my corner. And that's why he's our first male guest ever. I wanted to learn more about Robert's journey and share that with my audience because I know that there's so much that everyone can learn from Robert. So let's get started. Let me tell you just a little bit about Robert. And this is just a little bit of his badass resume. So he's based in the UK, and he's the founder and managing director of KC Partners, which is a world-leading legal talent solutions and content creation firm focused on community. He specializes in helping aspiring and qualified legal professionals with career advice and securing dream jobs. Robert is a passionate legal community builder, super networker, and content creator. He has a host of honors for his recruitment and is the most followed legal recruiter and talent solutions expert across social media. He's a LinkedIn influencer and UK Creator Accelerator program winner. He advises LinkedIn on new product rollouts and has been named as a top 100 rising star. He regularly features in LinkedIn news and hosts the LinkedIn Creators Audio Town Hall. He is the host of the world-renowned Legally Speaking podcast powered by Clio. He is passionate about normalizing the conversation around mental health and promoting more diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. His mission is to emulate the process or his success of his grandfather, who ran one of the most prominent law firms of his generation in the 50s. And aside from all of this, Rob is a proud father and a parent to his miniature dachshund, Otto. So welcome again, Robert. There's so much to unpack here. Like you have a very information dense resume. So let's find out who this human is behind all of that.
Well, firstly, can I say thank you so much for having me on your show? It's an absolute pleasure to be here. As you said, I absolutely am an ally, fan, supporter, love everything that you're doing. We've lots of mutual friends in the legal community. I know you've had some rock star guests, so it really is a privilege to be on your show. And thank you for taking the time to read all of that out to people, because you're right, there's a lot of different angles and things that I'm involved in that hopefully we can talk about today, but I'm super excited and super grateful. So thanks again.
Thank you so much. So one thing that I think that really nails down a lot of what you do is you are a passionate legal community builder, super networker, and content creator. And when I saw that in your resume or the media kit that you provided to me, I'm like, that really encompasses a lot of what you do. So let's go back a little bit. And you graduated from the University of Leeds, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And so when you got out of school, what was the world like for you? Were you like excited? Were you like, I'm ready to take this on? Or were you in a little bit of freak out mode? Because I feel like graduates come out with like different, obviously like perspectives of what lays ahead. So what was it like for you?
Yeah, it's a really great question because I graduated during a turbulent time as well. And you'll know, obviously, we've been through the pandemic. We've got a cost of living crisis over here at the UK. There's been so many adversities chucked at all of us in the world. And so when I graduated in 2008. That was really around the recession. It was Lehman Brothers crash. All of these things were happening. The financial markets had hit rock bottom, etc., etc. But I had a great time at Leeds. So I'm from the middle of the UK, and I wanted to leave home. So I'd only known that sort of area of the UK, Leicestershire, which is in the Midlands, for people who may know that. I'm testing some of maybe your US audience geography here. But then I went up to Leeds, had a wonderful time. That opened my eyes to things. But I always knew upon graduating that I'd like to be the first person within my family to go to London and work within what's known the square mile. So there's the City of London, which is officially a square mile, which is where all the top law firms, professional services firms, you name it, work. And that was always an ambition of mine. So I did a very general, I didn't really know what I was going to do within that, but I knew London was where I wanted to be. It was the Mecca, it was the home. So sure. Obviously, I went to Leeds, had a wonderful time. I did a sort of, a business management with some language French degree. That was brilliant. And then I got to graduation. Then I kind of, I was wet behind the ears. So admittedly, I wasn't as commercial or understanding about markets or the severity or the impact of the fact that jobs weren't being given. They were being taken away at that time. Redundancies were given away. It was a tough period. But at the time, I didn't really know. I was just going into London and I was like, okay, what should I do? And I very much fell into what then became my career, obviously recruiting. And then from recruiting, which again, we can break down, has led me into all of these other wonderful things. But that's kind of what happened and where it started. But I wanted to be the first sort of trailblazer of the family to go to London, make a success of it if I could, and get the experience there, because I knew that would then set me up for future life.
So what influence did your grandfather have on those decisions?
A huge influence. So I promised you that I'd speak very openly on your show because I appreciate your authenticity and what you stand for. And this will probably be an exclusive. So, and when I say that my grandfather on my father's side was assassinated. And so when I say that, that's quite striking. And then when I say my parents split up when I was 2.5 years old, and I didn't have a father figure in my life, that's quite an interesting couple of statements, to experience. And so my mum was a single mum raising 3 children. She did a very good job. It's tough. You mentioned I've got a baby daughter that's sort of 12, 13 months old now, and we've been through a whole host of different illnesses. But there was a real clear absence of a father figure, shall we say. Mm-hmm. And my grandfather, absolutely, who I speak very openly of, was absolutely that figure. He played more than just a typical grandfather figure, because our lives could have gone in a very different direction. He was a big advocate for education. He was a big advocate for maybe doing the things that we needed to do to ensure that we would have set up for life. And so he's always been a huge inspiration for me, because again, his father died when he was just 8 years old. He grew up in a very working class poor family. He had to get on with things. He was sent away to school, and he started his own law firm from nothing really, and was top of his classes in his law school. Super academic. I mean, I'm not an academic, right? I'm not as smart as you, Susie, and the lawyers listening in. But I'm, but I understand the importance of relationships and people, and I have a commercial mind. So I always wanted to try and emulate that success of the fact that he had such adversities at a young age, but was able to build a business and a legacy. And one of the stories, again, that I talk about, which sort of motivates me and the inspiration, is actually when he retired. Because remember, in the 1950s, we're in a hyper connected tech world, and we're seeing the influence of AI now basically do people's job for you, whether that's a different topic anyway. He was in an offline world, and so there was paper, there was pens, there was a completely different way of building a law firm, building a reputation, and keeping the reputation. Because he always said to me, Rob, it's very easy to be successful, it's far harder to stay successful. And it's very true, right? We can all get that 1 minute of fame or that 2 years of fame, and then actually a business that sustainably grows and is good is quite difficult. And he retired, and every year we'd go to his home for Christmas, and I would see more and more Christmas cards get delivered to his house. And I was like, okay. I said, Grandpa, you don't have that many friends. He's like, no, I know, I don't have that many friends. I said, who are these cards from? And he would say, who do you think they're from? I said, I don't know. And he said, well, these are actually all from clients and the next generation of children of my old clients. And this was maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 years after retiring, that clients, former generations of clients and their families, the profound impact of not just being the lawyer, but actually ensuring that the work that he did really benefited those families, really benefited the next generations, looked after and protected businesses, because he was a commercial and corporate lawyer. So he did a lot of that.
Next question.
So that, and because in the time where I'm from, Leicester was the second richest city outside of London in the 1950s, because there's a lot of commercial and hosiery trade. So he built a very successful firm and launched that. And that stuck with me, because I thought, if I could emulate that success and that legacy in a virtual world, online, hyper-connected world, leveraging social to amplify the voice, but to be known as, hey, that Rob dude did something slightly different, but he tried to bring people around in a community, make them feel good, and left a lasting impact and help people with their legal careers, and inspired them to maybe go for that job or to make that change or to speak up for that. That's kind of what gets me out of bed and makes me tick every day, and gives me accountability to know that I can't let the family name, because the KC, the seaside is car, my grandfather's side, I can't let that go to waste. So that's what kind of keeps me accountable over everything. When I'm having bad days, the days that suck, you know what it's like, plus the good days, it's like, okay, well, this is because I'm not going to let that legacy and that reputation slip. So that's what motivates me and gets me going. So I know it's a long-winded answer, but I hope that gives you a very raw, honest, open me. And I believe that's an exclusive on your show.
Wow, that's quite a story. And it sounds like you had an incredible grandfather and someone that you wanted to emulate. And someone who really drove home to you the importance of building kind of a community, even though it was in a different time era, right? Kind of like you said.
Yes.
It totally, I mean, granted, our technology right now is obviously evolving very, very quickly, but the internet in its current form in terms of networking online is still, I would say, in its infancy. I mean, we really started doing this there was Facebook. Well, I guess MySpace was kind of like maybe the first.
Yeah, I remember MySpace.
Remember MySpace? Yeah, that was in like 2005. And I remember I think that at one point MySpace was only, or maybe it was Facebook. You could only get Facebook. Yeah, that's right. If you had a university email address, and then it eventually evolved to, opening it to everyone. But that's how Facebook kind of started. Whereas MySpace was more open, but it was kind of that first, at least what I remember, like of that, social networking online. So you took something that was important to your grandfather and you applied it to, a completely new generation of people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the only constant in life is change, right? And we go through evolutions. And so, and what, you and I are doing, not everybody is on the legal bus for this. There are certain people in the legal industry that still perhaps don't sort of, understand the importance of, what we're trying to do in the communities that we're building. But I so strongly believe it is the right thing to do. And because it comes from a why, we were talking before off 100%. Air about, what is the why? Like, why do you do what you do? And, as someone who's in talent and help people with their careers, I ask a lot of people, why do you do what you do? Or do you really love what you do? Yeah. And they'll either draw a blank, or they'll be like, hey, family was in the law, so I went to be the lawyer, or hey, it was a well-respected job. So, but I was like, does it fill your cup? If it does, great. Or are you doing that to, because society says you should be doing that, in your opinion? And so, I think I really want to encourage people, if they're listening to this, just take a step back. Like, what actually really motivates you, and what is your why? And if you can answer that and your job stacks up again, great. If not, make 2023 the year that you actually make action and do something about it.
And figure out what your why is, because at the end of the day, that is going to be your driver. That's what's going to motivate you and help you get through those hard nights and wake up the next morning, even if you've had 2 hours of sleep with screaming. Like
I feel you.
Right. So it's what keeps you going no matter what. Now, some people will talk about the importance of having like the why to your why, right? That it goes even deeper than just your why. So that's something that I think that is kind of interesting to explore as well. Like, why is this your why? So is your grandfather alive today?
So no, he passed last year, and he was a big royalist, and just because there's so much going on right now, so he passed the year of the Queen's passing over here as well. So that was kind of a nice thing in a way, because he was a very big royalist. But yeah, he passed last year. but he had a wonderful life, and I think that's the other thing. He didn't just succeed in business, he succeeded in family. He was married, my grandma for 50, 60 years, had golden wedding anniversary, things that, I aspire to have all of that, if you know what I mean. So it was, I know we're focusing quite a bit on that, but I think it's really important to understand, like, who really are your people that inspired you, motivated you, and you actually take action from. Absolutely one of those figures.
Yeah, I think it's important to kind of look at those people in our lives and give them kind of that moment of gratitude, even if they're not, even if they aren't with us. And I'm sure that you made him very proud. Did you discuss with him very much your current business and what that looked like? And was he receptive to it, or did he have challenges sort of processing?
I think so. It's a very good question. He was like, "So you're just another employment agency, are you, Robert?" So he needed to understand more about it. He was a very traditional lawyer, and being a lawyer is a very prestigious job. Even back, even more so perhaps back then, when it was very hard to, particularly over here in the UK, to get qualified and everything else. So he was impressed that I set up my own business. I think he was very touched that I told him the reasons why from a family and legacy perspective, and very touched that it was connected to legal. But I jest with that because he also said to me, "Don't be a lawyer, laddie." When you already said you put me up being a lawyer. I think he really hoped to be an accountant, but actually, because he was a big advocate for obviously letters after your name, extra qualifications on top of the degree. But I would be horrible as an accountant. So you can't put a sort of sales, marketing, relationships person into an accounting role. Numbers are not my strength. I have a calculator and I have a good accountant. That's about where my numbers stop.
100%.
The other side of me is the other side. So yeah, he was touched. I remember when I gave him my first business card and it had his sort of surname behind it. And he was like, "Wow," he put it in his wallet and was like, "Okay, brilliant. That's lovely. Like, I wish you all the best." But I never got into the weeds because also, and this may sound contrary, he had wisdom, but he also had outdated knowledge. So what I meant by that, his business of strategy, he was like, he would say to me, "Law firms that advertise on the radio now, they're finished nowadays," because in his day, they didn't advertise. They didn't need, it was reputation, word of mouth. Now, if I was to say, "Hey, Gramps, I've got this social media strategy and I'm doing this outbound and I'm doing this things," he'd be like, "Right, so is your business going bust? Like, what's going on?" So it's just different times. So I'd lean on him for sort of leadership and wisdom, but not necessarily getting into the weeds, because I'd actually think he would have not in a bad way, but just not relevant strategy. And I think that's when I speak to people about mentors. It's like, it's great to have super successful people that maybe have made their millions, but what would they do to make their millions if that's important to you in 2023? Like, what investments do they have, or what knowledge do they have in the current market trends? Again, lawyers, someone who's become a top partner or a super successful lawyer who's now retiring, how much of their finger on the pulse do they have for someone maybe starting in the industry right now and training and in the environment, the climate? Maybe they have all the knowledge, maybe they don't. Maybe you need a variety of mentors. So yeah, I have varieties of mentors for different things. I went for him for wisdom, support, and leadership, but not necessarily the hard facts of the day-to-day and the strategy.
Yeah. I think that there are mentors that serve different purposes, right? In our lives. So when did you start KC Partners?
So this is my other biggest, well, I don't think I've said regret yet, but one of my biggest regrets in my career was not starting my business sooner. And I let my wage be my cage. And what I mean by that, I was, I fell into recruitment, and it wasn't easy to start with. I started in a recession. It was tough, but people were getting laid off. But after about a year and a half or so, it started to click. So, I left the FTSE 250 organization here, as headhunted to go and join a boutique. I helped scale that business up to only about 40 people, 30 people. But, I was the first organically grown director. I was in my early 20s. I was earning significantly well, and it kind of clicked for me. And I thought, wow, this is great. But actually, I probably should have left that opportunity. And again, because I didn't have the right network or people around me at the time, I probably should have set up my business 3 or 4 years earlier, because I was in a lane of sort of, okay, I was earning well. I had this director title. It came at quite a young age. I was sort of on a high. But really, I always knew in the back of my mind I wanted to set up my business, but I got to a comfortable point. So my point for anyone who's listening to this is like, maybe you want to try and turn that side hustle into a full-time hustle. Maybe you want to start a side hustle. Maybe you want to do something. do it now. There's no like tomorrow, like do it now, because otherwise you'll regret it. So I started in 2016, would love to have done it sooner. And since then, it's been an absolute whirlwind. We've had like the most amazing times. We've had the most horrendous times. And that's what it's all about. You have to have that why to get you through the journey. But I'm absolutely sat here 2023. Would I change any of it? No, because I'm also very grateful for the experiences we have, because we never lose, we always learn. And so I've learned a lot along the process.
Yeah, we learn from our failures, right? And so I argue that there's really not even, like, failures don't even exist. As long as we're taking them and learning from them, does the word even exist?
It doesn't. And I created my own acronym for lose, which is life offering some experience, right? If you actually break that down, when you actually lose, it's like, okay, well, maybe I'm getting some feedback here. I don't want to hear it, but it's probably the truth. And that's the result. So yeah, I like that. Life offering some experience.
Some experience. Okay, I'm writing that down. Life offering some experience. That's good.
That's the reality of lose, right? And so, I think it's very easy to sit here and talk about the wins, but it's very hard to not take lessons from our learnings, because if I hadn't had so many losses, I probably wouldn't be where I am today. So I am grateful 100%. For them. As hard as they are at the time, let's not beat around it. You get some dark moments and you think about things. You're like, am I good enough? Should I be doing this? Can I do this? Will I be able to do this? Etc. etc. So yeah, but I really like that sort of life offering some experience, and I remind myself of that.
I like that acronym. Acronyms are good. So with your Casey, what's been your biggest obstacle? Just like you're saying, like, we learn the most from the obstacles, and I think that's one of the best teachers for other people as well. What is like one of your biggest obstacles that you've had to go through, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, really good question. So I would say the biggest obstacle is when you start, right? So there's no secret that I wasn't starting necessarily at the time a unique business. I was just setting up another legal recruiting firm at the time. And the firm has obviously emerged and we have evolved. So I thought, wow, why are people going to want to listen to little old me who's just set up by themselves when there's established, imagine you've got the Cravath, you've got the well-established law firms and the mid-tier firms and the smaller firms that have been around for years and years and years. They know the law inside out. Why are they going to listen to little old me? What can I bring to the world? Because bear in mind, hadn't recruited in legal before. So I have, I've been through, I mentioned I started my career in a recession. I've also pivoted into 3 different markets. I set up a legal recruiting business without any legal knowledge or context other than having a family in the law. High risk from directorship earnings to then earning nothing, putting money into a market I had nothing. But risk equals reward, right? If you don't risk anything, you risk everything. And I knew I wanted to do this passionate project. So the hardest part was actually, how on earth am I going to get people to listen to me? Why are clients going to, because they can be like, okay, well, tell us about your track record. Tell us who you know.
It was all your mindset that was like your biggest obstacle.
Yeah. And so, but that maybe leads on to, if you want to get onto this now, or pull me back, if not, the strategy, which I think was genius, which kind of got me to where we are today around. So that's why, you understand the power of podcasting. But at the time when we launched our podcast, we were the first legal recruitment firm in the world to launch a podcast. But we didn't name it the KC Partners Podcast, because no one's going to listen to a legal recruitment firm that no one's heard of podcast. But if we branded it in a way, the Legally Speaking Podcast, and used that as our business development, outreach, thought leadership, content pillar, and actually just gave. You'll probably be familiar with Gary Vee. I've done LinkedIn Lives with Gary Vee. He talks about jab, hook, right? In terms of content, then hook your clients. So I saw pretty early on in the UK, before it became too saturated, that podcasts were onto something, because it's got long form content. People could consume it on the move, and it would allow me to build authority and to leverage social. Because I saw my competitors who had larger databases of law firms and lawyers on them, but they weren't using social. And I was thinking I could do one post and I can exponential views, reach, and I could be current. I was talking about before, strategy of the old versus strategy of the new. And this is back in 2016. Now it's all about short form video and edutainment. I've launched a new company about that. We can talk about that. But at the time, that's where
olden days, at this point, that's like way back in the olden days, because everything moves so fast, right? You have to always be so ready to iterate. Let's take a quick pause for a message from my sponsor, Prominent Practice.
Are you thinking about a career transition from big law or partnership to a solo practice, selling your practice, or maybe you're launching a project unrelated to law? Whatever the reason for your transition, you'll need support along the way. Enter Prominent Practice, an executive consulting and marketing firm specializing in branding, positioning, and reputation management for transitioning attorneys. Founded by a female entrepreneur who spent a decade building smart digital platforms for thought leaders before pivoting to focus on high-end service providers who were preparing for successions, mergers, and acquisition events in their businesses. If you're thinking about making a big business move, don't risk losing the ability to leverage the reputation you've spent your career building. Let Prominent Practice be your guide. Visit prominentpractice.com/blissed for an exclusive introduction.
And you have to be able to pivot. And so that's what, happens. So rather than me ringing up a law firm and saying, hey, I would love to help you with your talent. We could help you with bringing on people. We can help you with, retention strategies. I'd be like, hey, partner, I've got this podcast. I can put you in 4,500 cities around the world, your voice. I'm going to create all of this marketing for you. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. I'm going to create an article of it. I'm going to create a newsletter of it. I'm going to shine a light on you. I'm going to make you sound the most amazing partner in the world. And I'm going to do that all for free. Do you want to have a coffee and talk about that? Sure. Okay. And you build up a relationship on value add rather than, hey, I want your business. They get to know you. They get to like you. They feel warm. They feel excited. Oh, and hey, by the way, I'm also an entrepreneur and I've got this other business. We'd love to help you out. Oh, yeah. And you find out when you interview them what their hiring plans are, what their strategy is, what they're doing. And you suddenly say, hey, yeah, you're looking to try and build out that corporate M&A practice of 20 lawyers and you've got big plans. And I know you're just looking at the tech sector. It's really interesting because we've actually got this body of people. And so it was a great business development strategy to get in the front and the door, to separate the part, rather than just people were just cold calling people. I don't believe that's the way to do things nowadays. No one wants a cold call. You can be the best cold caller in the world and people still do it. And people will disagree with me. It's not fit for purpose in 2023. So at the time of 2016, we got established, used the podcast as a vehicle, and that helped complement the recruiting side. And it also led to all these other content pillars and community work that now I do today.
Okay, so you are on season 6, right? Legally.
That's correct. Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And we have a very special guest coming out next week, actually, but I can't say who.
Such a special guest coming out very soon. How exciting. I mean, how exciting. We're not going to tell anyone because it's
we're not going to tell anyone. It's top secret, but people on your show might know them.
they might have an idea who it is, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I like to talk about so you built up this awesome podcast, which is incredible. And it's crazy to think that, I mean, it's 2016 just seems like yesterday to me. And it probably does to you as well, like just with the pandemic and just so much going on. But you've also managed to build a community and you're building all of this content around, I guess, the podcast as well. So let's talk a little bit about the podcast and the additional opportunities that's provided for you as like ancillary benefits than what you're talking about just a minute ago.
So the podcast was really important for me because I understood the importance of a personal brand. Now, some people might be like, oh my God, he's gone down personal brand route again. We're so tired and sick and tired. But that is the reason that I have been able to achieve a lot of what I've been able to achieve. You very kindly mentioned that, I've been invited to LinkedIn's head offices. I've been advising LinkedIn on, their platforms. That's the #1 largest networking platform in the world, but they're the 800
You advise
million.
LinkedIn.
Yeah. So,
when I read that, I was like,
I've worked on their audio product, which has now come out, as part of their beta tester. I was on their creator alumni program, which just finished, and you'll know like the likes of Alex Su and Anna, I think he's been on your show, who have been on or on in the US, and it's incredible. And then to then be, chairman for Thomson Reuters legal leaders, 150 of the top world's GCs, me sort of leading the event, to all of these other amazing things that have happened, to being sponsored by the world's first legal tech unicorn and centaur, Clio. Who would have thought years and years ago when you're just one man and a mic that would have happened? But consistency and actually using content to build thought leadership, to build a personal brand, has actually made it's far easier for me to do outreach if I'm looking to try and do business with people, or indeed to get extra opportunities, or to lead to new business ventures. So the additional businesses that I'm involved in and I invest in have very much come off the back of being able to build a personal brand.
And having that podcast, which it all kind of, I guess, is together.
It did, but also making sure that the podcast had a point, right? You have a very serious, I'm a bit of a, this is the first time you've had a dude on the show, right?
Yeah.
But, you know who you want to talk to, and you know the audience, you know the message and what you're trying to do. Similar for us, it's careers led. We're trying to give thought leadership for people who want to know about the law and the career, and what we take that wisdom from those people and we share it. And I don't try to be too generic. So for anyone who's trying to get out there or get noticed, don't try and do everything. Stay in a lane. What is the niche? Inch wide, mile deep. Because I remember this famous Bruce Lee quote that you've probably heard 1,000 times, but it's I fear not the man who practiced 10,000 kicks. I fear the man who's practiced one kick 10,000 times.
Yeah.
And I think if you really understand of like focusing in that on what you want to be known for, your personal brand becomes exceptionally strong within that niche, that the more and more opportunities come your way. So I've been working with the Law Society, the official body over here in the UK, and all of these have been asked to review like books that are out on the Law Society. Like this would have never happened. Yeah, that would have been crazy. The guy who never knew anything about legal is now on the Law Society website as a review for the next cybersecurity toolkit and why you need to have it. So have self-belief, have self-confidence. And by the way, you're going to have a bunch of naysayers, like so many naysayers. Learn to love your naysayers, learn to love them, because there's no other way around it, and just go and get busy and stay in your lane, and you will find more and more opportunities come to you. And that's, honestly, I'm so grateful for having the tools like social media and all these things to be able to do it. That's brought all these opportunities, and the podcast is definitely, without that I wouldn't be where I am today, and I probably wouldn't have the business that we have today, or even the revenues. And a lot of people say, well, what's the return on investment? I say, don't think about the return on investment, think about the cost of inaction. What's the COI versus the ROI? Because the cost of not actually taking action on something now is very, very different to taking return on investment for something else. So I just want to mention that cost of inaction is very, very important. So not return on investment.
Is that a concept, cost of inaction? I've heard that before, and I feel like I need to integrate that more into some of my thinking. Is that sort of a concept that you look back and that's the reason you think I should have left the company that I was with?
Yeah, that's a great example of a cost of inaction, but also a cost of inaction now for me. If I'm looking here 2022, I believe there's a massive cost of inaction in firms not looking at short form video. For example, in my view, and that's why I've launched Legally Speaking Club as a new venture, because I don't believe articles and written content, because ChatGPT and all of these other platforms coming out, written content is going to be diminished because it's going to be saturated. And as of today, yes, you need to get attention of people. The attention span now is very, very short. And the digital world we're in, people want to be able to trust you, know you, be entertained by you, be educated by you in seconds. And that's why I believe firms that kind of understand that's the trend and where we're going currently, I think there's a massive cost of inaction to not doing that, in my own personal opinion. Whereas firms may at the moment be like, well, what's going to be return on investment of that? Well, don't look at it like that. Imagine in 5-6 months of adopting this strategy, amount of talent that wants to come and work for you, the amount of clients that have been orbiting you that now come to you, or the amount of referrals you get from existing clients that are liking what you're doing through your social print. I just think that's a great example of cost of inaction.
So what is like one of the biggest, I guess I should go back just a little bit. When you work with your clients, do you help them create their own podcast as well?
Yes, we have done that for some. We've done that for some firms. We've done that for some boutique firms, and we've done it for a range actually. So we've done that for an insurance law firm boutique. So they have and they only work on policy holder side. So that's a very specialist boutique firm. And so we said, that's great, because you have this real niche. So we can really niche your podcast down. We can get to the right audience, and we can talk about topic of influences and strategy and how you can position it and how you can get thought leadership, the types of people you want to do, all of that good stuff. So yes, we do that. And that's been a really exciting part, because I love that. I love podcasting like you. So that's definitely a part of what we do. And I enjoy that. But we have helped firms and individual lawyers as well who want to set up their own shows, maybe and barristers over here in the UK who have their own sets of, who are in chambers who are wanting to get their words out there. So yeah, we've done some pretty cool stuff like that.
You mentioned having naysayers. So I didn't know if it was around people that, you had maybe talked to about having their own podcast, if it was around that, or what exactly it was with respect to having naysayers.
Yeah.
Or is that just kind of...
No, it's true. People laughed when I said I had a podcast initially. So you think to back then to now, I now say I've interviewed the founder of one of the second world's most profitable law firms, John Quinn of Quinn Emanuel. I've interviewed Jack Newton, the CEO of the legal tech unicorn and Centaur, and the most admired CEO in Canada. And I've interviewed Carol Baskin from Netflix, one of the most grossing documentaries on Netflix of all time. And so you think just with those three individuals and the whole show and where it's progressed, it's like, if I'd have listened to the naysayers, that would have never have happened. Never ever would have happened. But moreover, amazing people you meet along the way, because when you connect, like we have a natural connection. Like I really love what you do. I love your content. I love what you stand for. I love your show. I love your community. There's a real connection, right? Whereas if I hadn't, we would have never crossed paths before if we didn't sort of, in reality, we probably wouldn't. I'm in the UK, you're in the US, you're doing your thing, I'm doing my day-to-day thing, but it brings you to meet other like and right-minded people. So please, if you have people that are saying, hey, not sure you should do that, make your own judgment on whether you think that's the right advice or not. Because honestly, if I'd have listened to people say, don't bother doing a podcast, it's a waste of time, it's a waste of energy, waste of effort, I would say no, because ultimately I knew that you have to do something different and you have to do something disruptive. I know I hate using the word disrupt, but it's true. And that's why now I'm banging on about short form video, because it's there, but it's not law firms there yet. And they're not disrupting and not understanding it. And the YouTube shorts and TikTok and where you can actually really commercialize and drive where the world's going, and Web3 and all of this interesting stuff. And that's why I'm all in those circles. So yeah, I'm waffling, but hopefully that gives you an idea.
No, it does. So let's talk a minute about Chat GPT, because you kind of dropped that a minute ago, and I think it's important to talk about, especially in the context of the legal world and even social media and content creation. I also I kind of fear a deluge of AI generated content that has very little what would I say, personality to it. What are you seeing kind of in your circles around Chat GPT in terms of hesitancy to pick it up, or any particular concerns?
I think I think people have concerns about you'll know too well, I'm speaking to the expert when it comes to content, and read or understand the T's and C's of whether that is your content or not. And if you're going to be putting that on branded content, or you're going to, do your homework. And I'm doing that so to make sure that you're comfortable with what there is. But I think the major reservation is you need to ensure why you're doing it. There's no point now using something like that, banging a lot of things out, creating a lot of noises. There's no real strategy behind it. I think the strategic people who understand what the audience is they're trying to do, or the clients that they're trying to appeal to, a platform like ChatGPT, which I hope they rebrand because it's a rubbish name and it's really hard to say. So I put into ChatGPT, if you were to rebrand yourself, what would it be? And they said Robo Genius or something, or viral genius. I was like, something needs to roll off on the tongue. If you're taking on Google, which is very easy to say, you have to do something with the name. Although I know it's I
struggled saying it just then. So
everyone's just going to say it wrong. It's like BP, whatever. So I think these tools, it's like anything, right? You can give me the world's best DuPont pen or Mont Blanc pen. It's not going to make me the best writer in the world. So it's a tool, but it's not necessarily going to make me the best at it. Same with ChatGPT. It's not going to make you the best content creator just putting in, hey, write an article about this, or hey, do this. It's okay, you need to actually make these machines learn, because it's machine learning, right? So you've got to actually understand what you're putting into it, how you can improve it so it can complement you, but complement you to the why you're doing it in the first place. It's all well and good saying, hey, this is going to get me loads of followers, this is going to increase my search engine optimization for my website. okay, great, but is it going to get you the right sort of clients, or is it going to, you know, why are you doing what you're doing? So I think,
why are you using it?
yeah, we're going to see a lot of mass just saturated content, because you know, people aren't going to do that. They're just going to go on the trend. And I think it's going to prove even more that quality content is going to be the ones that shine above the rest. I think there'll be a lot of sort of mediocre out there content, which is fine. But I think if you really want to stand out, it's taking the time to really understand these platforms, understand how to really learn them so they learn you. And I think then you'll get better results. But I think there's a real nervousness of just mass saturation right now, and you don't want to fall into that trap.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it evolves over the next few years, right? Because this, I mean, we're still in the early stages of it.
Yeah.
And, you know, so many people are utilizing it to some extent, and they're talking about it. I'm a trademark lawyer, and I did a search or I put a input in and said something like, do a likelihood of confusion analysis between a couple of different marks. And I was just playing around, and it gave a decent likelihood of confusion analysis. And so I was thinking, well, if this was real, I could just sort of cut and paste this and like really flesh it out. So what it did was it gave me the template or the backbone of it. But at the end of the day, I still would need to put my my voice to it. Right. Like I think that I wonder if people will start to be able to kind of differentiate or see what's being AI created versus something that has more of a tone. Although I also asked it to explain string theory to me as if I were a 5-year-old, and it picked that up as well. And it was like, it said like, okay, exclamation point. Like you could just tell the tone was like a kindergarten teacher, right? And I was like, that is a little crazy. I still don't understand string theory, but still, I was like, that's such an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Kind of learning tone.
Yeah, because tone is so important. Because my friend is a history teacher, and I said, "What do you teach?" And they were like, "Henry VIII, for example." And I said, "You know, what's sort of a typical homework or assignment you would set for your kids?" And I was like, "Right, let's put that into ChatGPT and say, can you write me X in 500 words, sounding like a 13-year-old student?" And she was like, "Wow, okay, that is really pretty bang on to what we would teach." And I was like, "Okay, well." The education system's going to have to do something then to keep up, because that's another, you know, another thing, you know, it's like, do you fight against the tech, or do you embrace it and think about, right, how can we encompass this to, you know, because like you say, what got us here isn't going to get us there. We're moving into this hyper-connected tech world. These resources, if used correctly, are great enhancers. But yeah, I just thought it was a really interesting example, because they were very shocked to know that these sort of things are out there now. I was like, yeah, this is happening.
This is really happening. Yeah. And I think that you make a great point, Robert, that like, you know, are you going to fight this or embrace it? I'm of the opinion that you embrace it and make it work for you. It's like what you were saying, as a tool, right? Just as it like a pen. Because there's not a lot that we're going to be able to do in terms of fighting it. So you might as well might as well learn how to use it.
I just look at things, I use simplistic things, because remember, I'm not as smart as the lawyers listening to this, but let's just take travel, right?
Yeah.
We had horseback, then we had boats to get around the world, then we had sort of, you know, planes and cars and whatever. Like, things get quicker, better, more efficient over time, and as a society we eventually embrace and use these things. And I think, again, these are just new tools that are going to be the familiar, you know. The traditional old hammer is now going to be something else that, you know, we just use, and it's just modern society. But I'm really staying curious to this, even more so because I have a young daughter and I want to be able to converse. I want to be able to, you know, I always spoke to, you know, my parents or sets of parents above me, or, you know, grandparents. Remember I said before, not fit for purpose now. But I want to try and be a fit for purpose dad when, you know, daughter's coming home from work being like, hey, this is what I need to do. And like, we're using this, and I want to be able to engage and not be naive and be like, oh my God, I don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So that's another reason.
That's actually great. I love that, because I think about how every now and then I will say like a slang term, and my, you know, like 15-year-old nephew will just look at me like, you're such a loser, right? So I'm, you know, and then every now and then I will ask him like, okay, so what are the cool words now that kids use? Like, I need to know what they are. So, you know, analogously, like you you want to stay on top of tech, if anything, so that, I mean, not for your own business, not only for your own business, but to, to be able to help the younger generation, right? In the ways that you can, with the wisdom that
Absolutely.
you have.
Yeah, I completely agree. And also from a, safety is going to be even more important, online safety, psychological safety and who knows how far all of this stuff can go, right?
Yeah.
And, that's why there's this big push to decentralization over
Yep.
centralization, with a lot of being, these bodies owning our data, retargeting us, basically, I can't use the word manipulating, that's probably too strong, but, they're using our data to, is it always in the best intentions? I don't know, and I'm not going to put something on the record now, but I think decentralization will eventually be the norm, because I think we can look after our data, and hopefully that's a good thing. And that's why I'm all for Web3. Yes, it has a number of legal constraints. Yes, there are a lot of things that need to be debated, but I do see the future very much in a decentralized rather than centralized form.
So what is next for Robert? What does 2023 look like for you?
So 2023 for me is getting this new business off the ground. So obviously I've got KC Partners. We're doing all of our talent solutions stuff for law firms. That's great. The Legally Seeking podcast, we're going to go into season 7 eventually. We're doing loads of great stuff. We've got loads of cool people coming on the show. So yeah,
a couple of weeks.
like mind blowing. We can't say though. I think people might guess, but I don't want them to guess. So I can't say. In a couple of weeks. So I'm growing that. I have a Web3 consultancy, so I'm growing that, called Web3 Insanity. I have a SaaS business, which is in the recruiting space. So we've just come from a couple of rounds of investment. So I want to see that grow. And then Legally Speaking Club, which is my new short form video edutainment business, where we just came up with our slogan, which is out with time recording units of 6, in with recording short form video clips. And I think that just sounds really good on the tongue. So so we're basically saying, the traditional, out with that, in with the new. So we're growing that business. I'm partnering with a chap called Henry Nelson Case. He's a top content creator, lawyer himself. He's been on billboards in New York. He's the that corporate lawyer on TikTok, hundreds of thousands, millions of views. And so we're partnering up to say to law firms, hey, we think you could do your marketing strategy a bit smarter, a bit neater, and you can get social and take this seriously now. And YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world. YouTube Shorts is a thing. The next generation aren't going to Google; they're going to TikTok for information. Edutainment is the fastest growing sector. The creative economy is huge. People are going to be wanting stuff in the metaverse. So this is where I'm going with those businesses and getting them off the ground, and I'm super excited. And we're coming for the US market as well. So if any lawyers out there or law firm owners, as a cheeky call to action, are thinking, hey, this guy might be onto something, then I'd love to hear from you.
Okay, so where can people find you?
Yes, great. LinkedIn. I always people like centralized. Go to LinkedIn, follow me, and send me a message, and then I will reply. It's the easiest way, because I think sometimes with websites and everything else, LinkedIn, Robert Hanna, send me a message, done. Simple.
Yeah, and Hanna is Hanna, no extra H on the end. So, but
that
yeah, like you, I think it's great to kind of just send everyone to like one centralized place, and they can link up with you on LinkedIn and take it from there. So, yeah, Robert, this was so awesome. I want to thank you so much for hanging out with me today and sharing just a little bit of your story. I know that there's even so much more that we could have dug into. And you dropped a lot of really awesome wisdom bombs. So I just want to say thank you so much for hanging out with me and sharing some of that with my audience.
Well, thank you. I've had an absolute blast. Like, I love what you're doing. So yeah, I really look forward to continuing to support the show, support you and all you've got planned for this year and beyond. So yeah, you've got a big supporter this side of the pond. But thanks so much once again. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, my friend. You have a great day.
Bye.
Bye, Robert.
Thank you so much for hanging out with us today on Legally Blissed Conversations. If you love this episode and you want to hang out with other inspiring and light gold female attorneys, be sure to join the Legally Blissed community at legallyblissed.com. And be sure to follow me on Instagram at Susie Hickson. See you next time.